The Biggest Story, How the Snake Crusher Brings Us Back to the Garden by Kevin DeYoung. Overview. Once upon a time, there lived a man and a woman. They were the happiest people on the planet. Unfortunately, things don't stay happy and wonderful for long. Here, DeYoung presents the story of the gospel from Genesis to Revelation, and the story focused on the one who had been foretold to be the snake crusher. The artwork of Don Clark facilitates the story that is a pleasure for both young and old, rich or poor, slave or free, born male or female, to know the snake crusher has come to set the captives free. Review. As Christian parents of young children, we are always trying to incorporate the gospel presentation to our children as they are our number one outreach audience we want to see come to salvation in Jesus Christ. And with young children, using pictures and stories is a big help in communicating that message. For the most part, young children's Christian literature involves fun stories without the consequences. We get the small ark with the giraffe's head poking out, but we don't get the reason for the flood to have occurred and being tied to God's judgment. We get David facing off against Goliath, but after the rock knocks out the giant, we don't see David ending the confrontation with a beheading. The stories of Jesus healing and feeding people and letting the little children come to him are there, but the cross seems to be missing from those stories. We remove death and judgment and the outcomes of sin from the stories of our children and wonder why there's no drive for them to see Jesus as anything other than our friend. Why see him as Savior if we're not showing them what he's saving us from, apart from an apple with a bite taken from it? But then we'll read to our children stories of swashbuckling pirates, wizards, and the battle of orcs, monsters being defeated by knights, or heroes of might. Works of fiction will communicate the hero's journey, but in the ultimate hero's journey, we remove the conflict that makes the brave one feckless and just another hippie lost in the era long ago. The Biggest Story from the cover offers us the hero's journey. The snake crusher brings us back to the garden. And the cover offers a literal path to follow. Here's a story that recognizes God as the storyteller, and his story being not just the hero winning in the end, but offering redemption unable to be realized in a world without pain and suffering to be redeemed from. There is judgment, there is death, and there is the cross, put into their proper context and designed from there the parent to limit or expand upon the need depending on the children's age. Yes, there are no lopped off heads in here, but failure by man, judgment, death, and the snake looms around every rock. But so is the God of life and hope and salvation. There is the cross and the empty tomb in this book. The pictures are going to be the biggest seller of the book and cannot be separated for why this is a good story. The style of the symbolism and the shape and form. There is almost too much on some pages, but done for a purpose. There isn't going to be Picasso's cubism as a way of denying reality, but in showing the epic nature of the story we exist in and travel in today. The mood is one that feels almost esoteric in weirdness and cosmic and grandeur. Again, one done with a purpose. The story doesn't conclude at the empty tomb or with Jesus just smiling after him coming back to life, as we might see in other books. The story continues because we're in the midst of the story. The one drawback is I would have liked to see maybe just one or two pages or a few talking about the role of the church in the history of the people who have made it up and continue, but the story goes to where the title promised us, back to the garden. However, this story shows the grandeur of God's plan, even with the fall and salvation of his people. This is a resource and tool that should be a gift to all parents who have been given the gift of new life. Final grade, A+.